Today we're going to be working in Lessons 6 and 7 of Excel, and those topics include working with ranges as well as creating formulas in Excel. Specifically, the items that we're going to be addressing today is we're going to talk about selecting multiple cells at one time. We're going to deal with the column widths and row heights. We took a brief look at that last time. We're going to get more in depth with that today. We're going to take a look at how to add cells together. We're going to talk about multiplying cells together, dividing cells, and then we're going to make this a lot easier by using a feature called AutoSum when it comes to adding cells, which is the most common feature or most common task that we'll be doing in Excel. We'll use AutoSum. And then we're going to use that fill handle again to copy those formulas from one spreadsheet to another. Now the first thing we're going to do is something that we've done before. It's going to be a merge and center. And I'm going to merge and center the text here in cell A1 with several cells. But we're going to do this a little bit different, just showing you a little trick for selecting. I could drag my mouse from A1 to E1, and that would be sufficient. That is what we need to do. But just mentioning another way to select this. If you click on cell A1, and hold down the Shift key on your keyboard, holding down Shift, I can then use my right arrow key to select to the right. If I wanted to, I could also select down using my down arrow key, but ultimately I just want to select from A1 to E1. So holding down Shift is a way of extending your selection. Once we've made our selection from A1 to E1, we are going to go ahead and click on Merge and Center to center the text within those cells. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to select from A5 to A10, and we want to apply a cell style to this. So we're going to come over here to Cell Styles. The cell style we're going to use is the same cell style that was used for cell A1, and that's going to be this Accent 6 down here in the bottom right corner. So I'm going to click on Accent 6. Now at times you may want to apply the same effect to multiple cells that are not necessarily right together. So in this example, I'm going to select this yes and no, that's cell D4 and E4, but I also want to select client ID, which is in B3. What I'm doing is I'm holding down my control key on my keyboard, and I click on client ID as I hold down that control key. I've now selected cells that are not necessarily together, and now I can apply the cell style. Again, that style is going to be Accent 6 to those three cells. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to select from B5 down to B10. So selecting all these cells that have the text in them. I'm going to initially wrap the text within the cell, so I'm going to click on this Wrap Text button. We've looked at that before, and that will wrap the text within the cells. But now what I want to do is I want to make column B wider. Alright, I don't want it to be so narrow so that the text wraps like it does. So with column B selected, I know the width I want to set is exactly 20. So I'm going to go to the Format button. The Format button lets you change row heights, lets you change column widths. In this case, we want column width. So we're going to set the column width to exactly 20. So I'm going to type in the number 20. I click OK. And so now my columns are set to 20. Now the problem at this point is I've got so much extra space here. So what I want to do is I want to auto-fit these rows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the rows. So I'm pointing actually at the number 5 to select the entire row, selecting from 5 and drag down to the number 10. Once these rows are selected, it really doesn't matter which line you go to in between these rows. So I'm going to pick any line I happen to be picking between 6 and 7 here, and I'm going to double click. That's going to auto fit these rows. The other option is under Format, I could say auto fit row height. That would be another way to accomplish the same goal. But I'm going to go ahead and just double click right here, and that should auto fit these rows so that they fit. Now I happen to notice that row 8 seems to be different than the others, so I'm going to manually adjust that one so that it fits. Now at this point I'm going to select column C. I want to do two things with column C. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set that green color, so I'm going to go to Cell Styles. I'm going to pick Accent 6. But the other thing I want to do is I want to make column C narrower. This is just going to be just a thin line between the text and the responses. So I'm going to go to my Format button and I'm going to change the column width to 1. Again, I'm creating just a very thin line between the text, the question, and the responses. Now, in column A, I wish to simply number these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, honestly, it's such a short group of numbers you could just type in the numbers all the way down. But I want to demonstrate the fill handle again. So what we're going to do is go to cell A5, type in a 1. Cell A6, type in a 2. I then select these two items. As we learned last class, we can use our fill handle to copy a series of numbers. In this case, I want to copy series 1 through 5, so I'm going to grab this fill handle and I'm going to drag it down to row 10. And I said 1 through 5, actually it looks like it's going all the way up to number 6, and that's fine. So I've got 6 items that are included in this. Now what I wish to do is I wish to fill in an X in various items over here. Rather than having to type X multiple times, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down, I'm going to click on the first cell, so I want an X in cell D1. I'm going to hold down my control key and I'm going to click on, I said D1, it really is D5. I'm going to hold down the control key and select D6, D7. I'm going to go over to E8. We're going to say no to this question right here. And then I'm going to come back to the D column and choose D9 and D10. Now, if I simply type in an X right now and press the Enter key, it would only put an X in the last cell that I clicked on. But, and I'm going to do a capital X here, I'm going to type in a capital X, but instead of pressing the regular Enter key, I'm going to hold down the Control key again. Holding down the Control key and pressing Enter, what that's going to do is that's going to enter an X into every cell that was selected here. Alright, and so that's just a quick way of being able to add our text in to all of these cells at one time. One of the things that I want to do is I'm going to select all of these cells in the yes and no area, and I want to put this text right in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to my alignment option and I'm going to choose center. That aligns it to the left and right. And as we learned in one of our last classes, I can click on this middle align and that will put the text centered as it relates to vertically up and down. I do want to increase the size of the text, so I'm going to click this increase font button probably 3 times here in order to make these X's appear larger. And the very last thing I wish to do is I wish to place borders, lines if you will, around these X's. So my borders button is right here in the font group. I'm going to click this drop down and I'm going to choose all borders here. And then I'm also going to come across and select from A5 to B10, from A5 to B10, and again I'm going to click on all borders, which I can just do now by clicking on the all borders button that is now appearing. So this will make my lines appear on the survey where I wish them to appear when I print this out. Now if I were to print this right now, I'm going to go to File, Print to show you a print preview. You'll see that it does indeed print the information that I am looking for. But let's say for whatever reason I don't want to print the client survey and client ID. I only want to print from this yes and no down. Here's what I can do. I'm going to go back to the spreadsheet and I'm going to select this area that I want to print. So I'm not selecting rows 1, 2, and 3. I'm selecting from A4 to E10. Now with those items selected, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Page Layout, and on the Page Layout I'm going to set the print area. I'm going to click on Print Area and say Set Print Area. What this does is it tells Excel to only print this whenever we print this page. Now I'm going to click away from everything, so I'm going to click even outside the print range. And to demonstrate that this indeed will work, I'm going to go to File, Print, and here's my preview. It prints out only the areas that I specifically stated that I wanted to print. Now we're not really going to print this, so I'm going to click the arrow to get out of the print preview. I'm going to save this file, and we are now done with Lesson 6, so you can close this file. So I've saved this file, so it's ready for me to do some calculations in it. Now in our document, basically what we're looking at is stock purchases. So there's a name of 4 different stocks here. And here's the share price. In other words, this is the cost of one piece of stock. But we're not buying one piece of stock. We're buying, in the case of Microsoft, we're buying 200 pieces of stock. So if one costs $29.44, I would need to multiply that by 200 to get this amount here. Well, what we're going to do is take a look at the formula. So here we are in cell D4. The answer to the formula is $5,888. But if you look up here, you will see how it came up with this formula. It took B4, that's this $29.44, and it multiplied it. The asterisk is the multiplication symbol. It multiplied it by C4, which is the 200. Well, let's do the very same thing in cell D5. Whenever you're creating a formula in Excel, you always begin with the equal sign. So we're going to type in the equal sign here. We're then going to, rather than typing in $11.95, we're going to type in the cell that it belongs to. So this is cell B5. So I'm typing in B5. Now I want to multiply B5, so I'm going to do the star symbol, the asterisk. That's the shifted 8, or if you go over to your number pad, you can click on the asterisk sign over there. So I'm typing in the asterisk sign, and now I want to multiply it by what's in cell C5. So I'm going to type in C5 here. And I'm done with my formula, so when I'm done typing in a cell, I press the Enter key. So it has now multiplied 1195 times the 1,100, giving me the total amount in this cell right here. And there's my formula, there's the answer. Now here in cell D6, we're going to do this again, but what we're going to do is, rather than type in the cell references, we're going to do something a little simpler. Because when you type the cell reference in, you could possibly make a mistake. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start, again, you're going to get sick of me saying this, but anytime you start a formula in Excel, you have to start with the equal sign. So here in D6, we type in the equal sign. But rather than typing in B6, which is what we would put in, I'm going to take my mouse and click on B6. Notice that that puts the B6 into the formula. Now I'm going to type in the asterisk sign. So I'm going to click on that shifted 8 or the asterisk on your number pad. And then again, I'm going to click, in this case, on cell C6. Now I could have typed it, or in this case, I clicked on it to prevent the possibility of typing a mistake. I press the Enter key, and that will lock that formula into place. Now, we're going to, in essence, repeat the process here for cell D7. So I'm going to start with the equal sign. I'm going to click on B7, type in my asterisk because I want to multiply, and I'm going to click on C7. When I press the Enter key, that does indeed complete the calculation for my multiplication. Alright, we've done some multiplication. Let's do some addition. In cell F4, I want to add the amount of the purchase and the commission. So I want to add these two cells together. So here I am in cell F4, and I'm going to type in the equal sign, equals. I'm going to click on this 5,888, that's cell D4, and I'm going to type in the plus sign this time, and I want to add this $9.95. I'm done with my formula, so I press Enter, and that calculates the cost basis. Repeating the process one more time, I'm going to type in equals here in cell F5. I'm going to click on D5, type in a plus, and click on E5. So I'm adding the two cells together, and it does indeed do the addition. Now, at this point, we've repeated this a few times, so hopefully that process is something that is familiar to you now. I'm going to shortcut this a little bit. Rather than typing, in essence, the same formula again and again in these two spots down here, I'm going to go back to cell F5. Here I have a formula, and what I can do here is I can use my fill handle to drag this down. So I'm going to take my fill handle, I'm going to drag it down two places, and that copies what was in cell F5 to F6 and F7. But I want you to notice that while it does copy it, it makes one small difference. Here in cell F5, the formula is D5 plus E5. Click on cell F6. Notice that the formula has changed to D6 plus E6, which is exactly what I wanted. And if I go to cell F7, it's adding D7 and E7. Again, exactly what I wanted. Now, folks, when you copy using this fill handle, most of the time it will modify the formula the way you want it to. However, there are some times that it doesn't do what you want, and we will take a look at that in a later lesson. But for now, I want you to see that you can very easily copy repetitive formulas down columns or in some circumstances across rows. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to calculate the commission percentage. So in other words, how much did I pay for commission compared to the entire purchase? Well, this is a division problem. So if I want to calculate a percentage, I'm going to be doing a division problem. So here I am in cell G4, And I want to do a division problem, so I'm going to begin, as I always do, with the equal sign. So I'm going to type out that equal sign. We're going to start this by clicking on the commission amount for the row that I'm in. So I'm in row 4, so I'm going to click on E4. And then I'm going to divide that, so I'm typing in the division sign. That's the slash, the one that's going in this direction. It's the same key that the question mark is on. So I'm going to type in that slash, and I'm going to divide it by this cost basis, cell F4. I'm done with my formula, so I press enter. Now again, just practicing division one more time. I start in cell G5, I type in equals, I click on the commission amount, that's cell E5, and divide it by the cost basis, that's the F5. When I press enter, it calculates out the percentage. Now, I want to round this to 2 decimal places. So before I copy this down, I'm going to go up to the very first one. This is cell G4. And instead of having 0.1687, what I want to do is I want to decrease my decimal values. This is a number, so I'm going to go to my number formatting. One of the things that I have available to me for a quick change is I've got my increased decimal, or in this case, decreased decimal. I'm going to click on decreased decimal 2 times because I want this to be rounded to 2 decimal places. Now, while I could repeat that for the other cell, I don't need to, because when I copy this down, it will copy the format as well. So with the first cell, G4, selected, I'm going to go to that fill handle. I want to copy this down 3 cells. So I'm going to copy down to G7 and let go. And that should now calculate the percentage commission for each row. As a quick check, I click on the last one, and I check to make sure that it's dividing the numbers E7 divided by F7, and that's exactly what I did want. The last thing we're going to make a change on is here in cell F8. What I'd like to do here is I would like to add up all of my purchases. So I wish to add these 4 numbers up. Now, based on what we've learned, I could do this. I could type in my equal sign. Don't do this. Okay, I'm just demonstrating. I could type in my equal sign. I could click on that first number, type in a plus, go to the second number, type in a plus, go to that third number. The problem here is while there's 4 numbers, and that's not that big a deal, if there were 100 numbers or 1,000 numbers I was adding up, I wouldn't want to have to do this 1,000 times to click on all those cells. Now on my keyboard, if you did follow along here, I'm going to press the escape key just to get out of what I was doing. The escape key is in the top left corner if you need to find it. Instead, there is a shortcut. Because we do adding so much in Excel, there's a shortcut for it, and it is on the Home tab. It's this backward-looking E. It's called Auto Sum. Alright? And what we're going to do is click on this Auto Sum button, and notice that it puts this dotted line around the numbers that I want to add. Now, honestly, Excel took a guess as to what I wanted to add, and it did guess correctly, and so the dotted lines are around the numbers that I want to add. So I'm going to simply press the Enter key to finalize this entry, and it is now adding those numbers up. So again, a quick way to add a group of numbers is to put your cursor where you want that answer to go, and then click on Auto Sum. Assuming that the dotted lines surround the numbers you want to add, you press Enter and you're done. Now, if the dotted lines don't appear around the numbers you want, there is a way to fix that, and we'll be dealing with that in a later lesson. At this point, we are done, so I'm going to hit the Save button for this particular file, and we can close this as we wrap up the chapter about basic calculations. In this lesson, we showed you how to select multiple cells using the Control key. We showed you how to set column widths and heights using the Format button on the Home tab. We showed you how to add cells together. Remember, when doing any of these, we start with the equal sign to add cells, multiply cells, and divide cells. We click on the equal sign and then click on the cells that we want to add, multiply, divide, typing in the proper function. That could be the plus sign or the minus sign or the multiply or divide. We wrapped up talking about the AutoSum feature, quick way to add things up, very useful tool. We'll be looking at that a lot more in depth later. And then we even showed you how to use the fill handle to copy formulas from one cell to another.